All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Harder Show. Excited to be jumping back in. I know Kevin, you and I have had some travel schedule complications, so we haven't gotten together for this in a few weeks. So excited to jump back in with you. This is 4th of July week, so we've got the big holiday coming up. The very exciting stuff, and thought we could touch on a few current events and some fun stuff before everybody gets off on holiday. How's that sound?
Sounds great. A couple weeks without you, James. I miss you.
I know. It feels like way too long. So glad we could jump back on here. You're in the office, Renovo headquarters in Chicago.
Yes.
Beautiful Chicago.
Oh, it's amazing. It's been so hot here, but when the weather's hot and it's nice here, there's people everywhere. So, and my kids are at sleepaway camp right now. So my wife and I have been pretty much out every single night for the last 2 weeks, and it's catching up with me.
You deserve a little R&R, and it's nice to get the early vacation before for the big holiday. The kids coming home for 4th of July.
One I picked up this weekend. She spent 2 weeks at sleepaway camp, so we picked her up this weekend. And then my older one has 2 more weeks still to go, and then we'll pick her up. We got one kid, one kid back, one kid still there, but it's all good.
Love it. Well, there's no better place to be in the summertime than Chicago. So in that way, I'm jealous. It's very hot here as well, but that's pretty normal for us.
Yeah, summers here are pretty amazing, but the rest of the year in Austin is pretty amazing. So
it is.
It's like 2 months that you're actually jealous of Chicago. That's it. 2 months.
That's about right. But I get the benefit of being able to enjoy both, pretty frequently. So it's a nice setup that I've got for sure.
Are you ready for Renovo Palooza?
I couldn't be more excited for Renovo Palooza. It's always a highlight of the year. For those that don't know, Renovo Palooza is the big annual gathering of all Renovo employees. We bring everybody to Chicago for the better part of a week to enjoy some time together and work on our game. But really, it's team building and culture and all the things that I think are really special about Renovo. So it's a really fun time, and I'm excited. We got some cool surprises this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You'll be seeing lots of it on social media for those that won't be present. So check that out and get a taste of what Renovo is all about.
Big award ceremony. We're very excited. I'm probably ruining some surprise, but big award ceremony. It's going to be great.
We are going big this year for sure. We do it pretty big every year, but I think we've really stepped it up this year, and I'm excited for the team to get a chance to experience
you guys keep stepping it up. The problem is that when we keep stepping it up, we have to keep stepping it up, and that's kind of a problem. So, this year is going to be awesome. The award ceremony actually should be kind of a big deal. So we're excited about that.
Very, very excited. And, I think that's what we're all about here at Renovo anyway, is raising the bar. So, challenge accepted. And so far the team and, the marketing team, Kate and the whole Alyssa, the whole team have done such a great job of organizing it. So
true rock stars. They're just amazing. Truly. Like
absolutely.
The Renovo events happen all across the country on a regular basis, and the team does an amazing job. And then, Renovo Palooza is a big one. So it takes a whole year to plan for it. And, 300 people flying in from around the country. And it's a lot to coordinate. And we're all running around town doing different activities, different things. Women of Renovo is a big event that typically happens every year at the same time of Renovo Palooza. So lots of events, lots of get-togethers, and I'm excited. I got to get some rest ahead of time.
Yeah. I think we had our first meeting about this year's Renovo Palooza just a couple of weeks after last year's Renovo Palooza. So all that work I think is going to be pretty evident when everybody gets in town. So very exciting. We won't give away too many surprises. We'll leave the team in a little bit of a suspense, but it's going to be pretty epic, and we're excited to share it with the world for sure.
Yeah, same here.
Well, let's jump in. So I thought maybe we could start with a little update on a recent lending conference we attended. The National Private Lenders Association, NPLA, does three big events a year. Their event last week was in Atlantic City, which I attended, and moderated a panel at that one. And we had a pretty big presence in terms of our team from the Northeast. They made a big push this year and have kind of rebranded that event as sort of their broker conference. Brokers do play an important role in our space. And while our business strategy isn't necessarily focused on brokers, they still, represent an important component of what we do. And we certainly support brokers. So it was good to be up there and in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, even Boston, some of those markets, brokers do play a little bit larger role in that ecosystem. So it was good to get our teams from the Northeast down and interacting with a bunch of the brokers. So that was fun. But thought I'd just kind of give a couple of high level takeaways that I made from the event. It was a really good conference. Atlantic City is a destination that I don't find myself in often. But we had a good time despite the challenges of getting to and from Atlantic City, which are well known for anyone who's done that. But it was a good turnout, I think. A lot of brokers. I think I heard 150 to 200 brokers were in attendance, which is great. And I think it was a good opportunity to kind of touch base with that part of the market. But generally my takeaway is, it seems like the space is, generally optimistic. I would say cautiously optimistic. I mean, I think things are still going pretty well for most. I know we've actually been having quite a bit of success. I think, there's a lot of reasons for that. But I don't know that everyone is absolutely knocking it out of the park right now, but I think a lot of folks are, able to continue to originate and grow their businesses. So, you heard a lot of optimistic comments, but there's the backdrop of, I think, folks recognizing that the environment that we're in is pretty volatile. I don't think I'm saying anything there that anyone doesn't already know. But it was interesting to kind of hear the thoughts in the background of, some of the potential headwinds, right? And with the current administration, there's lots of surprises. They don't let us get too comfortable before throwing curveballs. So I think it's an environment where you do have to be pretty cautious and really need to know what you're doing. But one of the things I heard that I thought was really interesting was that some of the capital providers, loan buyers, et cetera, are starting to pay a little closer attention to credit quality. I think we've talked about it on this show a little bit in the past, but there's a lot of capital in the space. Our private credit has become a pretty big buzzword in institutional investing, and a lot of folks trying to put money to work in the space, which is kind of it's muddying the waters a little bit. You get a lot of folks that have access to more capital maybe than they were used to in years past, and so you're seeing some pretty aggressive loan terms and other things to gain market share. A lot of kind of I don't know if gimmicky products is the right way to say it, but a lot of no points, no appraisals, a lot of interesting terms that might not be the best credit practices long term. And I think that there's what I'm hearing is that there's a little bit more focus from the institutional investors on making sure that credit quality is really strong. And we'll see if some of these kind of out of market, or at least historically out of market terms, survive too much longer. But you never know. Certainly we don't have a crystal ball here. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Are you hearing any more about that from the folks that you talk to on the capital side? Is there any more focus, if you will?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the volatile when you say like things are volatile. Like, how would you summarize that? What are like one or two or three uh, reasons you're saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, interest rates are one, right? There seems to be a case that maybe interest rates should come down a little bit. But I think there's a hesitancy at the Fed level to bring rates down, with the potential for, inflationary effects of tariffs in
All right.
particular.
So interest rates, number one. What else?
Interest rates, I think that the potential of being in another foreign war, and the unpredictable ramifications of what's been happening in Iran, and with the Israel-Iran conflict, that has, we don't know what could happen, and if certainly there are some pretty negative things that could come out of that potentially that could have an impact on people here at home, and I think that's one. I think immigration policy,
Geopolitical, and maybe even you can wrap up um, the immigration in that, or is that separate?
I don't know. I would think about immigration as a domestic issue. I think you're right. I think geopolitical risk is high. I think there's always geopolitical risk. I think the potential for geopolitical risk is always there, but it does seem to be heightened, and especially given what happened recently with the U.S. participating in some of the actions against Iran. So I think that's a big one. I would count immigration policy separately as more of a domestic issue, but that since the last time we talked, that has ramped up significantly and has caused a lot of news headlines around resistance to some of these policies and things that are happening in places like Los Angeles, even Chicago. And I think that right now that has had at least from my point of view or my knowledge, has had limited impact on our clients. But I think that if you project what's happening out into the future, if that continues to be an aggressive campaign, I do think that certainly could have implications for the workforce that is required on the construction side of what we do. And I think that's another potential headwind. Those are the three big ones. I'm sure there's many others, but
Earlier you were saying like credit quality, loan performance. Some of the loan buyers and investors are paying more attention to credit. Sometimes when I'm on panels, people talk about we're going to get back to basics, and I always kind of laugh with that, and I'm like, why did you move away? So far from basics. I think we have a little bit of a real estate and money tornado going on at the moment. Like there's quite a bit of investors out there now. There's a lot of money that's swooshing around in the space. And some of it has gotten into the hands, let's just say, of people who are a little newer to credit management, risk management. At the end of the day, we're still making here's what I think is happening a little bit. Like hard money used to charge a lot more and take risks that were associated with those higher prices to some extent, right? Like when you charged 13 to 16%, maybe it was okay that you were taking some risks. And then over the last 5-6 years, a lot of quote unquote private capital, which is supposed to be not necessarily hard money, which is supposed to be kind of a bank alternative, has found its way into our space, private real estate lending. And with that are lower return expectations than hard money, but supposed to be higher credit standards and more focus on the underlying borrower, not just the property. And I think that's kind of a crashing right now a little bit in the industry. You got, people like, oh, wait a second, we're supposed to pay attention to the sponsor and the borrower and their credit and their background. There's been a couple of massive fraud cases in our industry in the last 6 months. If you want to know one thing that's going to screw this whole thing up, it's a couple more of those massive fraud cases are going to really screw this industry up. You're going to scare the heck out of institutional investors that go, oh, wait a second. These people that are dealing with all this capital that we're putting to work maybe aren't ready for it yet. You know, they're thinking of us as a bank with less regulation, which is supposed to be more entrepreneurial, but still having some credit backbone. So that's what I think is happening a little bit is you have this money tornado. Forget all the other, in my opinion, at least, forget all the other stuff for a minute. Forget immigration, forget, Iran and all the other things that are happening. Those are important. Those are real things. But honestly, in our industry, I think what's not happening enough is our industry is not paying attention to just running fundamentals of a loan business. What we're supposed to do are make good loans every day, charge appropriately for those loans, and have good outcomes, and then do that again and take care of our borrower partners and our capital partners every single day. Every single day. And I'm worried that that's not, it's kind of happening in some parts of the industry, not in the others. And that's the thing that's going to screw us up, potentially is again, there was a particular case that happened in the industry, kind of, I'll just call it the fraud case, a fraud case that happened. And it happened, in the last 6 months. There's not a capital partner meeting that I've been in the last 6 months from every capital provider in the entire space, whether it's a bank, private equity firm, loan buyer, insurance company, anybody. That is the topic of discussion in those meetings. Is that one case, by the way? They know the borrower, they know where it happened, they know what's going on. And if you want to really screw this up, let's have a few more of those. We're going to screw this up pretty good.
Yeah, and that was definitely a topic of discussion at the conference. That we're kind of in a really interesting spot right now because the capital side of the equation, institutional capital, insurance companies, like everybody's kind of bought in on this thesis now, and but that means that there's a lot to lose, right? Because if we as an industry don't regulate ourselves and make sure that we're doing the right loans and keeping the credit quality high, a few bad actors can really taint the pool, right?
This is important capital. This is cherished money. This is insurance company money that's there for people's retirement. This is other forms of money that people's jobs are on the line. It's really important that we're all watching this, making good loans, double checking our sponsors, making sure this is all working. We got to take it seriously. And, to me, that's what's happening right now. It's a little bit of like a tornado. I don't thought of the word tornado, of people trying to figure this out.
Yeah. And it seems like there's definitely, there's a lot of folks who are maybe taking a more short-term perspective, right? Which is, hey, I've got access to this capital. The market is supporting what we're doing, and really not thinking about the long-term sort of viability of some of these strategies and some of these decisions on the credit side. And one of the things I've always loved about Renovo, about what we do, is that we take a much longer term perspective. And so, hey, right now there's a big party going on. A lot of people are jumping in and maybe doing things that in a normal environment wouldn't make as much sense, driven by the access to a lot of capital that's floating around. And I think we've always taken the stance that, hey, we don't have to join every party. We want to continue to be disciplined in what we do so that we can continue to provide our capital partners with great loan products that pay off on time and perform to their expectations. And I think that's the key to keeping those relationships going. I think there's a lot of people who are not really using that line of thinking and acting more in a reactionary way. And that may not be the best thing in the long term, but certainly it has implications for the health of our industry in general.
We're making housing related loans, right? So the way I mean, the way we at Renovo want to think about it, but I don't want to just make this a Renovo plug. It's really my own opinion is we're lending to sponsors to do real estate projects. That's it. So number one, we should be screening our sponsors, make sure they're the right people in the right locations, doing the right kind of projects with the right experience and the right credit backgrounds and the right character. They haven't defrauded investors in the last 6 months or done crazy things. We should pick the right sponsors, right? And then number two, it's the underlying projects in the real estate market. Now that's tricky right now. So the market there's in the United States, the real estate market overall is fairly healthy as a big, in residential housing, but it's choppy out there at the moment. Like there's certain price points that really aren't moving very well. There's certain property types in certain locations that aren't moving very well. There's other locations and property types and price points that are moving really quick and can't keep them on the shelf. So, as a lender, what you're really trying to do as a credit manager and a lender, right? You're really what we're doing is we're all mini credit managers on behalf of our investors, and we're really trying to marry what our opinion is in the housing market with strong sponsors. And really make sure. So when you see things like higher LTCs happening, right? Let's talk about when you say people are, getting aggressive. What I hear you saying is they're going higher LTC. Now, I believe higher LTC could work if you have really good sponsorship and you're in one of those housing segments that really makes a lot of sense. Then what they call that leaning in, that's what they call that. You're leaning in to a really good sponsor who's doing really good projects. Because risk management in real estate, we're not supposed to go over 75% loan to cost, ever. Right? That's like old school. If you look at banking and all this stuff, it's like 75%. It's probably where you should be. 25% down. When your parents bought their house, it was probably 25% down, right? Like that's how it worked. In our niche, we're supposed to know the housing market really well. We're supposed to be able to lean in to the right sponsors in the right locations and have good outcomes. So, where it's getting dangerous is when we're just leaning into everybody and we're making high LTC loans everywhere. And we're just kind of taking a housing bet that things will continue to go up. And I think that's in some areas causing delinquencies, in some areas not great outcomes. So, I just hope for our industry that we all keep getting better and better and better at being credit managers so we could, make this the great industry that it is and it can be over time. If anyone's putting money to work because the investor says it's okay, but they don't think it's a good idea, they shouldn't do that.
And I'm concerned that there are lenders in our space today that are not even doing that calculation. All they're looking at is what will the loan buyer buy from me, and then they're doing that. And they're not really doing the second level of calculation, which is, do I think this is a good loan? That I think is it. It's not to say that it can't work out, but if it works out, it would be against the odds.
I think that's called gambling.
Right.
That's not called lending. That's called gambling. I think.
And I think that's the concern that many in the industry are starting to voice a little bit more loudly is we need to make sure that we as an industry are taking the appropriate measures and steps and having the appropriate discipline to make sure that we're writing really good loans that are going to pay off, not just thinking about what can I get someone to buy from me. And I think, and one of the interesting things, especially, and you mentioned newer entrants into the space. There's a lot of newer entrants into the space, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but you are dealing now with folks that have not been through some of these down cycles. And lending seems simple, especially if you really know real estate. I think there's a lot of people who maybe would say, oh, I'd get lending. Like I've taken out a ton of loans for my own projects. I understand it. that's fine. You understand an aspect, but I think if you make mistakes in your underwriting and your credit evaluation, and you implement those, some of those things into your process, you won't necessarily know that you've made a mistake until it could be 6 to 12 months down the line. And by that time, you've now made that mistake many, many, many times. And then it's compounded. It's not like you get immediate feedback like, oh, this loan defaults in month one. That usually doesn't happen. It happens at the end. And so that's a concern, that you've got lenders out there that are not having the appropriate discipline on credit or asking the right questions. And then all of a sudden, 12 months down the line, they realize they wrote, a couple $100 million worth of loans that may or may not be the right, the right structure or what have you. And I think that's a big risk for people that are out there that don't have a lot of that experience. Sometimes the market will bail you out, but to your point, I don't think that's the right bet. And it's certainly not the right bet for our industry as a whole. And I think this is supported. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. I think it was yesterday, about Alan Waxman, who's the founder and CEO of Sixth Street, which is one of the larger sort of independent private credit shops out there. And I think Alan is credited with starting one of the first kind of shops of this nature within Goldman Sachs, and then left and started his own firm. They've been very successful. But Alan they did a piece on him in the Wall Street Journal where he's talking about some of these exact same concerns, but through the lens of the larger private credit space. What we do is a small corner of that space, but lending to big corporations, obviously large real estate deals. There's all kinds of things that fit within private credit. But he's making the same observation, is that there's a lot of capital in the space, and what it's doing, I think to the point you made at the beginning, is it's driving down the return for the same amount of risk that used to yield, higher returns. Now there's so much competition for those deals. Those returns are coming down, and that might be getting out of whack with the actual risk of the assets themselves. And that's a concern. So you're seeing that play out sort of at more of a macro level within private credit. And then obviously we're seeing it in our corner of the space as well. So I think there's definitely support for this phenomenon kind of, across, the private credit, sort of landscape. And I think, he's citing a lot of the same concerns that we have, which is it could taint the space and impact the appetite of institutional capital to be coming into this space, which is not a great thing. We've worked a long time in this industry to get to this point. We don't want to go backwards, right? And I think there's a potential that if we're not smart, that we could slide backwards.
Yeah, I read that article. Thank you for sending it to me over the weekend. He's a smart guy. I think I don't know this for sure, but I kind of think the Billions show was kind of made after him. So, what I took away from that article, similar to what we were just talking about, is that, private lending used to be pretty nichey, and it used to be higher return, a little more specialized, and the risk reward was pretty clear. And then now private credit is like it means everything. It means a lot, just all of a sudden it basically means, you're taking the lending market out of the banks and moving it basically into private manager hands. The Blackstones, the Apollos, the Renovo, put us in the same lane. But you're basically taking the lending activities out of banks and putting them in the private space. And that's happening because of, regulations that are in banking, and also because bank balance sheets aren't the greatest place to hold loans for the long haul. Actually, private is a good place to hold loans for the long haul. It's a really good place to hold loans. He didn't say this exactly, but this is my impression of the article, is that this used to be a niche and we used to get paid really well for this niche. There's a blurry line now, because so much money's moved over into this space that we kind of have to make sure that we're creating the right kind of rules and categories here. Like maybe certain loans we're making are really low risk, low return, safe loans. But it's pretty blurry right now which are which. What's what? He was the article was saying that like Apollo and Blackstone were raising all this insurance money and they were basically, just lowering the hurdle rates and making it really cheap and just I don't think is terrible. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think again, all they're really doing is moving lending activities outside of banks into private manager hands. And insurance companies are just another form of a bank, different regulation, and they don't have the infrastructure to originate and manage and service and underwrite loans. So they're partnering with private managers who have that expertise. But again, relating to our earlier discussion, we kind of better make sure we're ready for it, right? It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge responsibility. And we should really make sure that we're building the right capabilities because, one quote we always use around here, it's easy to give money away. It's hard to get it back. And, we all have to be running these businesses to lend, get the money back, lend, get the money back, lend, get the money back. That's the business we're in, not just lend. And that could, that could add, that could result in bad outcomes, to drive off a cliff. If we're not
and I think it could result in bad outcomes for the individual operators that are doing that, right? I think if you make enough bad loans, like your capital providers could easily put you on a no-buy list, and
look, your reputation as one of these managers is really important. Your reputation is what matters, right? That when you sit across the table from either an aggregator, an insurance company, a pension fund, a bank, they're going to go, let me see your track record. Let me see how your loans perform, right? I mean, that's your track record as an individual participant in this space, whether it's a broker, a lender who sells their loans, an aggregator who buys loans and then securitizes them or sells them to other people. There's aggregators that don't have a good reputation either of performance, right? So at the end of the day, and you're like Warren Buffett said, your reputation takes a lifetime to build and minutes to destroy. And I think in our space, it really comes down to, it doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean you can't make some mistakes, but are you being really thoughtful and responsible as you're executing loans?
Yeah. And I think being more aware of I think a lot of people are thinking more short term, and these smaller, more regional groups that are trying to grow and want to compete with the bigger groups like ourselves and others, there's an incentive for them to take a little more risk so that they can grab market share. But I do think that there is a short-term penalty if you don't do this correctly. And I think being very cognizant of that potential risk in the short term. And then of course there's the longer term implications to the entire industry, which is something we should all be paying attention to. But listen, most people are thinking about themselves.
Yeah. People have to take their time. This is credit. We're supposed to be responsible. Take your time. Most of the top players in the space today have been around 15 years. So if you've been around for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, take your time, build a foundation. All of us who are in, let's say the top 5 or 6 in the space, we grew through getting through downturns. All of us did. We grew through when that downturn comes, you either die or grow, one or the other, right? You most likely will not stay the same. You'll either start shrinking or you'll grow. And for anyone, newer, if you're in the first 5 years, Renovo's in its, 15th year, so I kind of think of it as we've been through 3 5-year cycles so far. And I heard Ray Dalio. I was listening to an awesome podcast on with Ray Dalio. Alex Rodriguez did a podcast with Ray Dalio and Belichick. It was awesome. And I love one of Ray's quotes. One of my favorite quotes If you worry, you don't have to be worried. If you're not worried, you better be worried. So that's like something that's really fundamental, I think, in private credit.
I think you're exactly right. And that's kind of, circling all the way back to, sorry, my office manager has decided to come
Oh, I see
visit.
your partner is there. Okay.
Yeah, my partner crying back here, Bodie. But circling back to, the way we started this on the NPLA conference and some of the comments that I heard there, I think what's interesting to me is, for number one, I think it's positive that those things are being talked about on those stages, that we are starting to hear more people preach a little bit of caution, preach a little bit of restraint. I think that's a good thing for the industry. But, it's also interesting, and not necessarily at this conference, because the panelists at this event that were talking about this subject were representing the largest players in the space. So those are shops that are more mature. They have larger teams, a little bit more sophistication in terms of the way that they're put together. But sometimes you hear people saying all these things that I think are the right things, um, you also, we happen to know that some of those groups are still doing the same stuff that they're kind of cautioning others against, and that's kind of that dichotomy that is tricky, I think, for the industry. So we'll see how it plays out, but I think I certainly feel comfortable with our approach to this issue. And I think we are always thinking about the longevity and the long-term health of our business, and have never
About it like it's your parents' money, or if you like your parents, or your money, ideally your money, that and every time you make a loan, I think whether you're us in our space, or you're Sixth Street, or anyone, your reputation, that loan is stamped, kind of made by Renovo, or made by Sixth Street, or made by whoever, um, forever, So
yeah. Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting if we see a major market correction, which, not necessarily predicting that, but certainly it's always possible. Those things rarely does everybody kind of see them coming. It's usually you get hit by the train you didn't see. But if something like that were to happen, I do think there's some shops that are pretty exposed in terms of some of the credit and underwriting guidelines and policies that they've inputted, and to the extent that they've put out significant amounts of capital, um, you know, in some of these a little bit less secure ways. I think you will see some shakeout, but who knows, right? I mean, the markets can be unpredictable, and I think from our standpoint, I think if we continue to be disciplined about how we deploy capital and to whom we're deploying it, making sure it's the right product fit, the right market fit, the right customer. I think we're going to be in good shape, and I hope genuinely that our space does that our competitors and all that do continue to refine that.
You know me well, and I think I'm a positive person. Bad things will happen for sure. We will absolutely have another crisis at some point. I don't know when, right? And every day we all should be waiting for that thing to happen. Now, not to the point where you can't get out of bed in the morning, but to the point that, to Ray Dalio's point, like, you should be fearful every day, because when that thing happens, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about what you did in the past to fix where you're at. Where you're going to enter that storm with whatever you've been doing for the last year or two, for sure. You know what I mean? Like when COVID hit, or when the GFC hit, or when interest rates went up all of a sudden, those are the three, pretty much, those are the three big disasters, right? That basically, Renovo's hit in the last 15 years. But I don't want to make this about us. I'm just saying, like, in our industry in the last 15 years, those are probably the three big catastrophes that have happened. When those things happen, you can't go backward. You can't go fix the thing. Oh shit, we made a bunch of bad loans. Oh man, I forgot that we didn't do that thing. Well, it's too late, because you can't go back to your investor now and say, can I, can you give me an extension on that thing? It's like, when those things happen, everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
So,
no redos.
There's no redo, and you've got what you've got at that point. So, and they will happen. I don't know why. It does seem like nowadays the world moves faster than it used to. We've been having like once in a lifetime type disasters every 5 to 7 years somehow. It's okay. I mean, look, so I don't know, probably due for something in the next 3 years, 4 years, some crazy shit gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, and I think it's a great mindset to be running one of these businesses. So, definitely, and listen, I again, we wish all of our competitors the best, and we want them to succeed, because
too, we wish us the best. We're praying for.
Well, of course, but we can control what we do.
Well, yes, but we're all vulnerable. Look, we are all vulnerable. Right. We are vulnerable. Everyone's vulnerable. We're all human. We're all vulnerable. Crazy things could happen. And I think, thinking that you're going to brave your way through is not realistic. You will be crying in your bedroom corner if you think you're going to brave your way through. You won't. You're going to be vulnerable. It's going to hurt. You're going to have to make really hard decisions. You're going to regret some things you did in the last year or two, and hopefully you'll be proud of a few things you did in the last year or two.
As we kind of get close to wrapping this up today, I thought it would be fun to end on a lighthearted note. And as we mentioned at the beginning, this is the week of 4th of July. Today's Monday, the 30th. So we've got the holiday coming up at the end of the week. I wanted to ask you, in the spirit of America's independence, what does that holiday mean to you? And what are you guys planning on doing to celebrate as a family?
What does it mean to me? It means my wife's birthday. That's what it means to me.
Good answer.
It's a good answer. It's pretty much the biggest national holiday in my house, which is my wife's birthday. And this year is a special one. She's turning 40. So it's a big birthday on top of it. So we are going, we're going with like, 4 or 5 she's got like 4 or 5 really good girlfriends that they travel together for their birthdays a lot, and they do girl trips. And because my wife's happens to be over the 4th of July, the husbands are joining for this one. So we're all going to Colorado, and it should be really fun. So yeah,
that's great. Colorado sounds amazing.
What about you? What are you doing?
So we are going down to Rockport, Texas, which is on the Gulf Coast, South Texas. I live in Austin, and a lot of my family's from South Texas. So one of my cousins bought a house right on the coast. Got a brand new boat and all the cool stuff. So we're going to go down there and enjoy the weekend and grill some American food and enjoy the boat and the weather. So that's our game plan, and super excited to get a little time down on the coast. A little salt air never hurt anybody.
No, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, this has been great, Kevin. I think we covered a lot of important stuff today. Thank you for jumping in and for the time and
doing this amazing podcast, James.
Yeah, well, it's it's a team effort, but excited about what we've been doing here, and hopefully people are finding it valuable. So, with that, we'll sign off, and we look forward to coming back and doing some more of these here in the next in the coming weeks. But for now, thank you again, and we hope everybody enjoyed the show, and please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we look forward to continuing to bring you guys some great content as we go forward.
Happy 4th, everybody.
Happy 4th. Take care.